In order to summon a tuner monster, you have to send a tuner and a non-tuner monster from your field to the grave with the correct levels, which places a big emphasis on tuner monsters for decks using the mechanic. Synchro Tuner Monsters fall into a weird position, as you need a tuner monster to summon them in the first place, making their uses and combos far more specific. Still, many Synchro Tuner Monsters have succeeded in the competitive scene anyway, while just as many have failed. And today, we're going to take a look at the Synchro Tuner Monsters that didn't quite work out. And starting things off at number 10, we have DPH Gendamoore. This is a level 8 Fire Cybers tuner with 2000 attack and 2800 defense and 2 effects, each on hard once per turns. If this card is synchro summoned, you can special summon a level 4 or lower Cybers monster from your grave, but its effects are negated and you can't special summon for the rest of the turn, except for Cybers monsters. Finally, whenever a Cybers monster dealt battle damage to your opponent, you can banish this card from your graveyard to inflict that much damage to them. Gendamoore is a card that has potentially useful effects, but in the context of Cybers stacks, it doesn't have much of a role to fill. Theoretically, you could use a level 4 tuner and a non-tuner Cybers monster to make Gendamoore, then use Gendamoore to summon your non-tuner Cybers back, then make a level 12 Synchro monster, which would be powerful. The problem here is that Gendamoore locks you into Cybers, and Cybers monsters are all about links. There really aren't many Cybers Synchro monsters, and fewer that are high enough level to use Gendamoore as a synchro material. Despite the fact that this should amount to a powerful synchro maker, using Gendamoore to extend synchro plays very rarely works. Still, you don't have to make synchros with Gendamoore. You could simply use Gendamoore to make a link monster instead. But if you're doing that, you could have just made Splash Mage, who doesn't require a tuner to summon, can summon any Cybers monster that isn't a link monster, and is a link 2 monster. So it's more useful for link climbing. The only thing you miss with using Splash Mage is the burn effect of Gendamoore, which isn't really enough to move the needle in either direction. The card could be useful if we ever get a level 9 or higher Cybers Synchro monster that's really important for a deck, but that just doesn't exist right now. The card really isn't bad, but there are few enough Synchro Tuners at a monster that simply doesn't have a use case despite having potentially strong effects, is still easily one of the weaker cards in this group. And at number 9, we have Cryston Quandax. This is a level 4 Water Machine Synchro Tuner with 1800 attack and 2000 defense. It has the effects where, during your opponent's main or battle phase, immediately after this effect resolves, you can synchro summon a monster using this card as a material. If this synchro summon card is destroyed by battle or card effect, you can target a non-synchro Cryston monster in your graveyard and special summon it. These sort of quick synchro effects are a staple of Synchro Tuners, and they're quite the useful effect. Being able to tag into whatever synchro is best suited for what your opponent is doing can be extremely powerful, not to mention using on-summon effects as a quick effect being extremely strong with the right cards. However, this is also an effect that appears on a lot of cards, and many of them have higher upsides than Quandax does. While they do have different level lineups, generic options like Formula Synchron allow you to draw a card on summon, and Shooting Riser Dragon can send a monster from your deck to the graveyard to modulate its level, allowing for more synchro plays. Cryston also doesn't have much use for the cards nowadays, with better options for quick synchro effects like Cryston Tristalos and Cryston Keytree. You get the picture. If you have the ability to summon a different card with this effect, you would. Of course, there is an if in that statement. This is the easiest water synchro monster to summon with a quick effect to synchro summon, meaning that any decks that lock you into water monsters, such as Mermail or Marincess, can use it for any synchro plays they may want to go to without messing up their combos. So, while the card isn't great, it does have a role to play in very specific scenarios. So that makes it better than a lot of the other cards higher on this list. And at number 8, we have Garden Rose Flora. This is a level 5 Light Plant Synchro monster with 800 attack and 1600 defense. It has 2 effects, the first of which allows you to target one card in the field zone and destroy it. Then summon a Rose token, a level 2 Dark Plant monster to your field. However, you cannot summon from the extra deck for the rest of the turn besides Synchro monsters. It also has the Quick Synchro effect, but only during your opponent's main phase. This is part of the Black Garden archetype, built around the famous Black Rose Dragon, and Garden Rose Flora's use case is pretty obvious. By destroying a field spell, you get 7 stars worth of materials across 2 monsters, and the ability to synchro summon on your opponent's turn. This can allow you to tag into Black Rose Dragon to destroy all cards on the field at any time, a powerful form of disruption. This is potentially strong, but it also is just not really necessary. By the time Garden Rose Flora had released, the game was at a powerful enough place that this wasn't such a powerful form of disruption that you'd want to warp your endboard around it. And worse, there were easier ways to accomplish this goal in the first place. Crossroads Dragon is a simple Link 2 monster that requires 2 monsters of different types that can let you tribute itself and a plant monster to summon a Rose Synchro monster from your extra deck, and this is treated as a Synchro summon. Not only can this do the same thing as Garden Rose Flora, but it can also special summon other cards like Rudy Rose Dragon and Bramble Rose Dragon, and it has a graveyard effect for extra value. The only real argument for Garden Rose Flora would be if your deck doesn't have many monsters of different types, or many plant monsters, making Crossroads Dragon difficult to utilize, or if you really wanted to destroy a field spell. Realistically, by the time both of these cards were out, you would only really be playing Black Rose Dragon in a more dedicated strategy anyway, and there are much better cards when it comes to destroying yours and your opponent's field spell. Really, the card just doesn't do much that other cards in its own archetype couldn't just do better. And at number 7, we have Fish Lamp. This is a level 4 Fire Fish Tuner with 1200 attack and 400 defense. It has the effects where, if this card is sent to the graveyard as a synchro material, you can special summon 2 level 2 lamp tokens. But you can't special summon from your extra deck for the rest of the turn, except for fish monsters. Also, as long as you control a fish synchro monster, you can banish this card from your graveyard to target and destroy a card on the field. This is a card that seems like it has an obvious use case. There are some fish-focused synchro decks, Goaty being a prime example. So you would think this would be an obvious place to jam in Fish Lamp. Unfortunately, this has a few problems. A lot of the best fish support cards and cards that you'd want to play in these decks lock you into only summoning water monsters from the extra deck for the rest of the turn. And Fish Lamp is unfortunately a fire monster. For a quick example, White Sardine and Marincess Coral Anemone are both cards that a lot of decks would consider playing. White Sardine can send a copy of itself from your deck to the graveyard to special summon itself from your hand, but then it waterlocks you. And Marincess Coral Anemone can reborn a water monster with 1500 or less attack, but then locks you into water monsters. There are some other cards that can clash here as well, such as the Bishark, though those are probably the most painful water locks that you can find in fish synchro decks. Now, you may think that you can just use Fish Lamp before going into these cards, but unfortunately that's not true either, because Coral Anemone is a Cyberse instead of a fish, causing more clashes with how you'd like to perform your turn. Even in decks like Goaty, the card is so situational that often decks would cut it for generic options like SP Little Knight or Typhone, despite the locks in the deck preventing you from summoning most of the time. Because Lamp is so awkward to use and does so little, they still come up more often. Overall, the power level of Fish Lamp isn't high enough to justify using it instead of the monsters that just lock you out of waters. And you certainly can't play them alongside each other either. Maybe someday we'll get an entire fire fish synchro deck that could use Fish Lamp, but right now it's mostly dead weight. And at number 6, we have Geomathmech Magma. This is a level 8 fire Cyberse with 2500 attack and 0 defense. It has the effects where, if this card destroys a monster by battle, you can target up to 2 cards your opponent controls and destroy them. If this card is destroyed by battle, or if this card in your possession is destroyed by an opponent's card effect, you can add a Mathmech spell or trap card from your deck to your hand. The Mathmech archetype is the first archetype in this video that actually did see competitive success. Unfortunately for Magma, they never once played this card. Mathmech as a deck is really good at one thing and one thing in particular, OTKs with general cyber slop. Mathmech Multiplication allows the deck to turn just about any boss monster into a 1-card OTK machine by doubling the attack of a Cyberse monster the extra monster zone when it's sent to the graveyard. The deck's de facto boss monster, Geomathmech Final Sigma, was a great target for this, as it was unaffected by non-Mathmech cards while it was in the extra monster zone, and did double battle damage, letting you easily OTK through your opponent's monsters. However, even this card wasn't played in many Mathmech lists, as Axis Kotaker was just better at killing your opponent through a single battle phase. Considering that Final Sigma was not good enough to be played, despite having a very powerful combination of effects specifically for OTKing, which was the main thing that Mathmech did, it's probably pretty obvious that Magma was bad. It didn't help you OTK, and didn't help you get to a boss monster that could. Sure, it was okay removal if you could already beat something by battle, but if you got to a battle phase as Mathmech, you should realistically just be winning that game. The only saving grace of this card is that it's fully generic, and there aren't many level 8 synchros that can destroy 2 spell or trap cards a turn, so there is a theoretical application for it. In lower power level formats such as Sealed or Duel Links, this card can genuinely be good, but when it comes to constructed play, it's never really done anything. And at number 5, we have Flower Cardian Moonflowerviewing. This is a level 6 Dark Warrior tuner with 2000 attack and defense and requires 1 tuner and 2 non-tuner monsters to summon. It has the effect where, once per turn during your main phase, you can draw a card, show it, and if it's a Flower Cardian, special summon it ignoring its summon conditions. And it can attack directly this turn. You also skip the draw phase of your next turn. When using this card as a synchro material, you can treat it and all other monsters used for that summon as level 2. Now, this card has a strange series of effects, though considering it's a Flower Cardian monster, that's probably not a huge surprise. The deck is supposed to play like a game of Hanafuda, and they do accomplish that pretty well. They also let you draw a ton of cards, which may sound great, but the rest of the deck punishes you for hard missing on hitting a Flower Cardian monster with your draws. So you have to play a lot of Flower Cardian monsters. This is a bit of an issue, because the Flower Cardian deck is, while cool, not exactly powerful. Being forced to play so many Flower Cardian monsters in your deck means that you can't really play any other engines or even many non-engine cards in general. And while you can make some neat synchro monsters, the overall power level just isn't high enough to compete with other strategies. Moonflowerviewing in that light is bad for pretty obvious reasons. It is very much pigeonholed into being a Flower Cardian combo piece, but that role will only ever be so strong. Still, the card is generally fine in the deck it was made for, so it's hard to really be that harsh on it, even if said deck has never been good. And at number 4, we have Phonon Pulse Dragon. This is a level 4 Dark Dragon Synchro with 1900 attack and 800 defense. When this card is Synchro summoned, you can declare a level from 1 to 3, then this card's level becomes equal to that. But also, the only special summon you can perform for the rest of the turn is a synchro summon using this card as a material. You can also only special summon this card once per turn. Now, this is a very strange effect to the modern eye, as the idea that you would give up being able to perform any more special summons just to get a tuner of any level you want is obviously terrible. However, this card is quite old, and back in the day, changing this into one more synchro summon is a lot better. Facilitating one more powerful synchro summon to end your turn off on isn't by itself a deal breaker. The issue is that the actual level modulation isn't good enough for that purpose. Yes, there are some situations where you have too many levels on board and want to summon a synchro monster that you want. It is certainly possible that having this card in your extra deck could allow you to chain into synchro monsters that you otherwise couldn't summon. However, that's not realistically going to happen very often. There's also the issue that, if you have too many stars on the board, summoning a level 4 tuner is going to be difficult anyway. Usually, if you have a board where the levels of your monsters are too high for a synchro summon, it's probably because you have a lot of monsters that are at least level 4 or higher. In that situation, Phonon Pulse Dragon isn't going to help you. Other cards that are higher level with a similar effect, such as Excel Synchron or Shooting Riser Dragon, are both far more versatile and can generate additional value by changing their level. Really, they could have printed Phonon Pulse without even the summoning restriction on it, and everything else would have been perfectly fine. And that's really all you need to know about the card's quality. And at number 3, we have Battlewasp Azusa the Ghost Bow. This is a level 5 wind insect with 2200 attack and 1600 defense. It is the effect where, when your opponent takes effect damage from another Battlewasp monster, you can inflict damage equal to that monster's original attack to the player on a hard once per turn. If a monster is destroyed by battle with one of your own Battlewasp monsters, while this is in your graveyard, you can special summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. The Battlewasp archetype is interesting because it's almost identical to another fan favorite deck, the Blackwings. It's essentially a warped version of the deck from an alternate universe in the lore, and as a result, many of its cards are very similar to the Blackwing cards. For example, Black Whirlwind has the effect where, when you normal summon a Blackwing, you can add a Blackwing with less attack from your deck to your hand. Meanwhile, Battlewasp Wind has the effect where, up to twice per turn, when you normal or special summon a Battlewasp, you can add any Battlewasp with less attack from your deck to your hand. Essentially, they're slightly updated versions of the Blackwings. However, this hasn't allowed them to be as successful as the original. This is thanks in large part to releasing so much later into the game's lifespan, and their effects, even with updates, failing to slot into the modern game. Azusa is a good example of this, and while the card is generally fine, its effects definitely feel like they were designed for an older, slower game. Being able to reborn itself is strong, but having to wait until after you destroy a monster by battle is a bit slow by modern standards, and was practically unusable when the card was released, several years into the Link era. The burn effect especially is something that feels outdated. Effect damage has generally become worse and worse over time as games have become faster and OTKs have gotten easier, and the ability to find lethal without attacking has been made less and less useful. Additionally, similar to Moonflowerviewing, this is a card that has pigeonholed itself into being used in pretty specific decks. If you just want a level 5 Synchro Tuner, even something like Garden Rose Flora would be better in a generic deck. So this card's viability lives and dies off of its Battlewasp power. Azusa, like many cards on this list, isn't without uses, it's just not really ever found success at high levels of play, thanks to not having a home in any competitive strategies. And at number 2, we have Lifestream Dragon. This is a level 8 dragon with 2900 attack and 2400 defense. When this card is synchro summoned, you may have your life total become 4000. You can't take effect damage while this card is on the field. And if this card would be destroyed, you can banish an equip spell from your graveyard to prevent it from being destroyed. However, it specifically requires one tuner monster and exactly Power Tool Dragon as its materials. Power Tool Dragon is a level 7 synchro that has the effect to find 3 equip spells from your deck and randomly add one of them to your hand, and it can destroy equip spells equipped to it to prevent itself from being destroyed. Lifestream Dragon is a card with a lot of effects, but most of them are pretty superfluous. Putting your life total to 4000 doesn't really help in most board states, as you have to already have very low life points for this to gain you a meaningful amount of life. Stopping burn damage is similarly unimpactful. Really, the only effect on this card that's worth caring about is being able to protect it by banishing equip spells from your grave, which is good value. But it's not enough to justify trading Power Tool Dragon and a tuner for this card in most board states. It also synergizes with equip spells, historically one of the weakest card types in the game, which automatically lowers the power level of the card. However, the worst part of this card is that it specifically requires Power Tool Dragon to be summoned. Sure, the cards do synergize together, but you have to have exactly Power Tool Dragon and a level 1 tuner to even be allowed to summon Lifestream Dragon, a card which is only situationally useful. It is okay at cleaning up late game, but we're talking about a niche within a niche at this point. This is also the card where the Synchro Tuner typing is the strangest so far. Most of the cards on this list have a reason to be Synchro Tuners, often specifically paying you off for using them as a synchro material. But this card is supposed to be winning the game for you pretty quickly when you summon it. It's hard to imagine a situation where you'd even be bothered to summon this card and then use it as a material for a different, even larger synchro monster. It's just a strange card overall. But there is a card that causes even more questions to pop up. And at number 1, we have Puralis, the purple Pyrotile. This is a level 2 fire reptile monster with 800 attack and 1400 defense. It is the effect where, if this card is sent from the field to the graveyard, all of your opponent's monsters lose 500 attack permanently. On this list, we've talked about a lot of cards that are somewhat okay, but are the weakest of the relatively small pool of Synchro Tuners. This is maybe the only Synchro Tuner that is actively bad. This card released after Formula Synchron, a level 2 Synchro Tuner that draws a card when you Synchro Summon it and can allow you to perform a quick Synchro on your opponent's turn. If you summon Pyrotile, you are giving up an extra card and flexibility around when you perform the summon in order to make your opponent's field lose 500 attack points and nothing else. This is an awful trade that has only gotten worse with time. This attack drop in effect just isn't worth giving up an entire draw, not when that draw could be some form of removal or a way to continue comboing. As the game has gotten faster, combos have become even more potent, and the likelihood of the card you draw allows you to continue your combo has only gone up. Really, the only time you'd want to use Puralis is if you specifically need a level 2 Synchro Tuner to summon a specific boss monster, but are locked out of summoning a light or machine monster so you can't make Formula Synchron for some reason. Puralis is maybe the only truly bad Synchro Tuner monster, as it's the only one where you can't even really invent a scenario where playing it would make sense in your deck.